Carolllyn, what do you believe the legacy of Joe will be?
I think that Joe's, of course, reparative therapy, his contributions not only to helping men heal from the trauma, and then his training of so many clinicians, I think all of that will come together someday as an understanding of the truth. That people, he was so optimistic. He really believed that eventually people would get it. That the society would get it. That the psychological community would get it. Because he saw it in his clinic every day that people could change. And I think that when that recognition happens, his resources that he wrote and all of the work that he did will become even more important.
Why do you think there was such a strong reaction to his work?
Well, I think it's because so many people have bought into the narrative that and by the way, I think it's a crazy narrative that our erotic attraction is part of our core identity. But our culture has bought into that, at least in the Western world. And so even people who had not experienced same-sex attraction were offended that this idea of your core identity being wrong, they just bought into that idea that it was offensive. As opposed to allowing people to choose their core identity, as opposed to allowing people to self-determine, our culture has gone the other way and limited people, brought them down to this shallow story about themselves. And I think that people get offended when you speak outside of the common narrative.
Carolllyn, could you give us an update on the research project that I know you and Dr. Nicolosi were involved in?
I'll give you a little background on this. The research project started when I was working on something else with Dr. Phil Sutton and a couple of other researchers in a similar project. And Joe approached me and said, hey, I have all of these potential participants at my clinic. Why don't we do something similar? So we received permission almost to the day 4 years ago to launch this study where we were exploring the impact of sexual attraction fluidity exploration and therapy, specifically reparative therapy, on the well-being of the participants and also on their sexual attraction experiences. So we started recruiting participants, we started gathering data, we monitored their well-being almost on a weekly basis and measured their sexual attractions, their feelings, thoughts, desires, identity. And at this point, we have over 100 adult male participants, and we have found that their sexual attractions have moved steadily away from same-sex attraction and steadily toward opposite-sex attraction, and their well-being has flourished. And this is all statistically significant.
What endures for you when you think of Joseph Nicolosi now that he's passed away?
He's such an enigma because, he was like this huge personality, brash, that New York Sicilian thing, but he was also just this soft heart. If you ever saw him work, his ability to have empathy and connect with his clients in how they moved him. They never quit moving him. One of the last times he and I had a conversation, he was talking about a session he had with a client in which the client experienced some profound healing, and Joe just came to tears. And this is what he did every day, but he never lost that. So he is the most congruent person I think I've ever met. His psychological perspective matched his perspective of biology and theology, and he just lived his whole life out of that place. And you don't meet too many people like that in your lifetime.
When we were in Hungary, Joe complained a lot about the food, as I remember. What are your remembrances of your time with him in Hungary, briefly?
Well, that's actually where that conversation took place. We were just having this side conversation where he was just sharing about his clients, and But yeah, that was fun. He wherever he is, he embraces the situation. He'll complain if there's something to complain about, but he loved Hungary, and he just thought it was so beautiful, and he loved the people, and it was just fun. We went out to dinner with a group of others who were there, and enjoyed that time, and I think he spent a whole day in Budapest by himself before he took off, just because he wanted to get to know it. So he just embraced everything that he came across.
Carolyn, when you heard the news, what was your reaction?
I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. Apparently, I was at my office at work after I got off the phone with David Pruden, who was the first one to call me. My neighbor, my office mate, came by and said, "Are you okay?" So apparently, I was emoting quite a bit. It's still hard for me to believe it. It's such a big hole in the universe, with him being gone. It's just hard. And in the Alliance, it's hard. He's the heart of that organization. He was the energy. He was there from the beginning and maintained his work with the organization. So I can't even imagine what it's going to be like for us to continue without him.
What would you say to clients and people who have pretty well depended on much of his writing and teaching at this time?
I got a couple of emails from participants in our study that were clients of his. So he was, for the study, the treatment is being provided by other therapists as well. But a couple of them emailed me to offer their condolences to me. And so I did have a chance to actually talk to them, email them back and have some conversation and just check in with them to see how they were doing with this huge loss. And I just congratulated them on the work that they had done, and to keep the hope that he had for them, keep the optimism that he had for them, that he knew that they could achieve healing, and that to always remember that they still have him as a cheerleader.
Carolllyn Pelle, thank you so much for your contribution.